was leaving the state for graduate school. To earn some cash, I took a part-time gig doing some light bookkeeping for a small business owner guy that my dad knew. They had a business where you could rent low-level farm equipment, a small mom-and-pop type thing in the sticks. Since they knew my family, they trusted me to go in there for about 15 to 20 hours a week and check and file the rental forms, make sure nobody missed a payment date, answer an email or two discussing prices / availability, etc. It was a super easy gig. The old building where I worked was about 90 years old, and at the top of this little hill, the downstairs used to be an old country bar until the 1970s. I could work any hours I wanted as long as the work got done, so I'd usually go in after 7 p.m. and stay until around midnight or 1 a.m. because that way I'd be alone and could listen to music loudly and take my time. The office was on the second floor of the building and looked out onto a long driveway. One night during winter, it had snowed a few inches, but I was desperate to get out of the house, so I went into work at about 8 p.m. I always left the gate open at the bottom of the hill because, and I mean this when I say it, nobody ever showed up at night. We were literally in the middle of nowhere. To even turn onto our short road, you had to be only coming to our specific building and know it was there beforehand. So I was jamming away to some Fallout Boy. Everybody makes mistakes when they're young, and having some coffee. I kept glancing at the snow outside as I worked, since our one orange street light reflected onto the ground at the gate and was causing the light to shine off the snow in a really cool and, dare I say, beautiful way. Around midnight, I went downstairs to do my bathroom business, then came back upstairs and got settled back into my work. I probably did about 5 minutes of work, and then I glanced outside and saw a huge imprint of something in the fresh snow just below the orange light. It seemed like a huge dog or a substantial animal had just rolled around on the ground there on its back or something. Since I hadn't noticed it 15 minutes before, it had to have happened while I was in the bathroom. I shook it off and assumed an animal was attracted to the light or something. At around 2 a.m., I was leaving and got out of my car to lock the gate, and to be honest, I had pretty much forgotten about the imprint in the snow. But when I looked down, I was shocked to see that it wasn't just some disturbed snow, but it was undeniably the imprint of a human-made snow angel. I used to make snow angels when I was a kid, and they're very recognizable, so I 100% knew that's what it was. And it was deliberately made underneath the light post, but it wasn't from a kid, it was from a very large person. And I already knew whoever had made this snow angel could easily have looked up and seen me through the window, so they must have waited for me to head downstairs to the bathroom before they made the angel. No cars had pulled up to our building. I would have seen or heard them, even from the bathroom. So I glanced around for footprints in the snow and saw that there was one set that led to the nearby woods to the right of the building. It was clear the person didn't use the road, but instead came from the opposite side, which instantly made me uneasy because that side was just trees and darkness for miles and miles. By now, I was freaking out and trying to get back into my SUV. And that's when I heard it. Before I could get into my car, I heard loud, high-pitched laughing coming from the woods. It almost sounded like a fake laugh, like the witch in Wizard of Oz, like someone was doing it fake on purpose. It was close enough that I knew they could see me, but I couldn't see them at all, since other than that street light I was under, there was no light. stopped. And then it was just silent everywhere except for my heart beating through my ears. Then the laughing started again, even louder, more like screaming and laughing combined. I sort of froze for like 5 seconds, listening in a panic. Now, I spent a lot of time in that area, and I know what coyotes and foxes sound like at night with their high-pitched screeches during mating season. This wasn't that. This was very human. It felt like it was an adult man trying to emulate a woman laughing, like someone was deliberately trying to make a fake, scary shriek laugh in order to scare someone. Well, it fucking worked. After 5 seconds, I filled up with adrenaline, got in my car, and drove the hell away from there as fast as I could without sliding off the road. I worked there another 6 weeks or so and never had a single issue, though I knew where my boss kept his gun, and I always made sure it was there when I started my shift, and I certainly always locked the gate from then on. Story 2. We moved into a new to us house 6 months ago. There are 2 large bedrooms upstairs and 2 small bedrooms on the main floor. My husband and I take one of the upstairs bedroom, and our 2-year-old daughter is in the other. Since moving in, she's been a bad sleeper. She'll get up several times during the night, sometimes crying, sometimes talking. So we put an extra bed in her room, and then we've been taking turns sleeping with her, so at least one of us gets a decent night of sleep. The ceilings slope in the bedroom, and the only window is at the end of the room, so we have a twin bed on each side of the window with a 6-foot space between the beds. Our daughter is very active. She walks, talks, crawls, and climbs. One night, it was my turn to sleep with her. She gets into bed with me, lying alongside me. I don't know what time it is, but it's dark outside, though we get a bit of light from the neighbor's garage through the blinds that don't quite close. Usually, when she talks or gets up, I ignore her, because I don't want to wake her up even more. I even keep my eyes closed, lest we make eye contact, in which case it would be game on, and she'll be up for the whole day. But this night, she gets in bed, and she's still. I'm sleeping on my stomach, and she moves, so she's laying on my back. She's a solid 2-year-old and quite heavy, so I shift a little to get her to move, but not fall off me. She keeps climbing and putting her arms around my neck. She's cold, but it's a chilly night, and if she's climbing on me, then she's not been covered by a blanket. She's very persistent, and this feels like it is going on forever. I'm getting frustrated that she won't just go back to sleep. She's on my back, scooching down and laying on my legs, then back up to my back with her arms around my neck. I finally crack and say, "Will you please just go to sleep?" At which point my daughter, from the other bed across the room, says, "What's that, Mummy?" The weight on my back instantly lifts, and I look over to see my daughter sitting up in bed, literally on the other side of the room, looking at me. I take her and book it into the main bedroom. And the next day, we move her bed to a downstairs bedroom and take turns sleeping on the floor next to her bed. Nothing felt ominous, just somewhat playful, but I am not eager to experience it again. That would freak me the F out. I'm getting another mint. Okay. Story 3. We moved to a small beach town about 4 years ago, became friends with our neighbors, and enjoyed the more relaxed and slowed down lifestyle that a small beach town offers. worse. One time, we found a note in our bushes imploring us to give back my children. I have several children, and the note writer said that they were coming back to get them. Weird, and worth a call to the local sheriff's department, but that was it. About a year ago, or maybe longer, because I think it was mid-pandemic, my incredibly capable and stout-hearted neighbor, I'll call her Mary, knocked on my door and asked me out to the middle of the street to talk. She then apologized to me and asked if we were all right. Surprised, I said, yeah, we're okay. Why? Mary is a no-nonsense, second-generation German-American, about 65, works all day in her garden, taught for 40 years, and is fazed by nothing. She says sorry because she didn't get to talk to us last night or check on us at all during the commotion, and says that it wasn't very neighborly of her, but it was just so late and her nerves were frazzled. I told her that nothing happened last night and that there was nothing to apologize for. That's when I see another neighbor, Ron, from a block over, walking up to us. Unbelieving, she's like, what? I could have sworn I saw you outside last night during the commotion. Ron now is right next to us and he says, dude, how could you not have heard it? Apparently, the night before, around 1 a.m., Mary heard a loud booming coming from her front room. Like all the houses on our street that face the coast, hers is dominated by a large picture window that overlooks the hill down towards the water. Thinking it was just sonic booms or artillery testing rattling the window because we live next to a military base, she didn't think much of it. However, after a while, Mary said that she thought the booms were getting louder and that they might break the window, so she got up. When she walked from the back bedroom she shares with her husband, who was still asleep, into her front room and turned on the light, the booming on the window stopped. She noticed after turning on the light that her front picture window now seemed to be covered in mud. After looking around for a few seconds and seeing nothing, she turned off the lights and headed back to bed, again faced by a nothing. As soon as the house was dark, the booming started again, this time coming from the front door. Inset slightly from the window, the front door has a tall, thin window next to it that allows you to see who's in the inset. In the dark, Mary said she peeked through the window and saw movement. Immediately wide awake, she went back to the bedroom to get her husband. Now Mike, Mary's husband, is an old-school beach bum and firefighter, has seen it all and has no time for nonsense. So Mike gets up, foregoes getting the guns that Mary says he has, because this is a nice beach town after all, and walks with Mary behind him to the front door. Carrying just a tennis racket, Mike turns on all the inside lights, as well as the porch and outside lights. As soon as all the lights are on, Mary screams. All the stuff on the front window that she thought was mud gets lit up. It's not mud, it's blood. Hundreds of bloody handprints of someone banging on the front window. And now that banging was coming from the front door. Mary tells Mike not to open the door and picks up the phone to call 911. At this point, two things happen. Mike opens the door and the person at the front door starts screaming. Mary says that all she could hear was, and I kid you not, help me, they've took my kids and are eating my face, they're eating my face. Through the crack in the chained door, Mike is now looking at a woman, or what he thought was a woman, with long black hair, covered in blood, and pounding the door. Help me, they've stole my kids and are trying to eat my face, was all that this person kept saying. Mary said that there was so much blood on this person that she couldn't tell what the person looked like, and what they at first thought was long dark hair was actually reason, the sheriffs decided to take the person into custody right before they reached our house. I have several young children, as well as a large old picture window that surely would have broken after a few good slaps. That morning, Mary shows Ron and I her front window and door. So much blood. There was never any follow-up from the sheriffs as to who this bloody person was or what eventually happened to them. The only thing we ever heard was that it was someone known to them and that drugs were involved. Okay. And then we have story number 4. This happened to me the summer I turned 11, and it is one of the scariest, weirdest things I've ever experienced. I think it was a nightmare, except at the end, there was another witness. That summer, my parents sold our very regular one-story house and bought a much larger, incredibly unique house in the next town over. The architect who built it used all kinds of old reclaimed materials, and almost all of the windows were antique stained glass that came from England. The outside had wide, rough cedar planks instead of regular siding. My brother and I learned early not to run our hands over them or we'd get splinters. It was the coolest house I'd ever lived in. My room was huge. It had its own bathroom and a walk-in closet. There were 2 large stained glass windows facing outwards towards the street, but at an angle. These windows were deeply recessed under the roof line. It was Florida, and this kept the scorching hot sun from directly shining into our rooms, or any of the rooms in the house. When we moved in, my mom put my bed against the inner wall facing the windows. Again, coolest, most beautiful, most original house I'd ever lived in. Our parents didn't tell us about the house until the deed was done. Then they took us over there to see it, and we were so excited. It seemed so huge and exotic and grand. We moved in, and my brother and I spent the summer exploring the neighborhood, which was a lot older than the one we moved from, with a bunch of cool older houses in it. We tried to meet some kids, which we did, and when we did, we found out why our parents got a great price. The guy who built the house, who was a well-known local architect who had built quite a few unusual, unique homes in the area, was also a convicted pedophile. All the kids in the neighborhood knew about it from their parents, and when they found out which house we lived in, oh boy, they would just go on and on like, you live in the haunted house. The guy who built your house is a pervert and went to jail for it, etc., etc. We were surprised, but snorted at the idea of the house being haunted. No one lived in the house before us, so what exactly was haunting it? I mean, it looked like it could be haunted, but it was also technically brand new, reclaimed materials or not. I had also happened to read the Amityville Horror that summer, long before it was debunked as fake. I've always loved scary ghost stories and stuff like that, and I never really felt especially scared or freaked out myself. But for some reason, that stupid fake-ass book scared the shit out of me, resulting in my developing some serious sleep issues that summer. It didn't help that we were in a huge, strange house that I wasn't used to yet, and also because the house had so much wood inside and outside of it, every room had a smoke alarm with a red light that was really noticeable at night. The one in my room was on the wall right next to the closet, and after reading that dumb book, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and see the red light and immediately think of Jody, the big demon thing with red glowing eyes that the daughter in the book saw, and I'd lay there thinking about the book and freaking out about the light. It usually took me hours to relax enough to get back to sleep. This happened almost every night. where the larger lower half was a rectangle, topped by a smaller sideways rectangle, intersected by a thick wooden frame. My mom put in shutters on the lower half and sheer curtains on the top half. Some parts of the window were clear, like regular glass. Some had like thick wavy glass, and some had colored glass. So when you looked through them, you'd get a distorted view of the outside, some parts of it clear and some parts not. So the head, or whatever it was, wasn't easy to see except as a shape. It kept rising above the shutters like it was trying to see into the room, then it would sink back down. I have no idea how long it was doing that before I noticed it. My first thought was that someone was standing on a ladder trying to see inside. But if that was the case, then either the ladder was propped up against the window glass below, or the person was very tall. But then the head shape did something so horrible, so strange, I almost screamed out loud. It had been peeping up from below the shutters like a regular person would, but then it disappeared, and when it reappeared, it was looking in from the side, like whatever it was had changed position and was suspended sideways in the recess, which was impossible. All thoughts of weird dude on ladder flew right out of my head, and bad thoughts about demons and monsters flew in. I lay there in absolute terror, watching as the figure would appear and disappear, sometimes from the left, sometimes from the right, and then most horribly upside down, as if whatever it was on the roof, hanging over and looking in. Except again, these windows were in deep recesses, and the head was right next to the glass, meaning it was clinging, or, God help me, floating right outside. At some point, I realized I could hear it as well. It made these faint scratching sounds as it moved around, kind of like when squirrels scramble around on cedar planks, or like on the cedar planks of the house. I couldn't see any facial features, and it didn't look like it had hair, but it definitely had an oval-shaped face. I don't know how long I lay there, scared to death, watching this thing look into my room. But then, having no idea what was happening, my brother walked in to use my bathroom. One of the less convenient features of this house was that his bathroom was actually located off the laundry room on the first floor, and he did not like walking through a dark house in the middle of the night, so he used mine instead, which was fine with me, and especially welcome at that particular moment, because it broke this strange spell. I screamed at the top of my lungs. The thing disappeared with a loud scratching noise, like it had claws that slipped off the cedar planks, and my brother said, "What was that?" I started crying. My brother just kept asking, "What was that?" And he almost felt as shaken up as I did. He told me later that the minute he walked into the room, he knew something fucked up was going on, because the hair on his arms had stood straight up. I spent the rest of the night sleeping in his room on his spare twin bed. The next day, we went outside and looked all around, but there was no sign of anything. No marks in the ground as if there was a ladder, no marks on the side of the house, no evidence at all that something had been crawling around my window, trying to see in. We never told our parents. They weren't the kind of people who believed in the supernatural and would have dismissed it as a nightmare. And it was the kind of soul-scarring experience that would have been made so much worse for being dismissed out of hand as imagination, when what I knew was that it had really happened. It never happened again, or nothing like it. We lived in that house for years, and everything was fine. But I wasn't taking any chances either. The next day, I rearranged my entire bedroom so that my bed was now between the windows, and I moved my dresser and my mirror to a position where the mirror didn't face the windows either, so I wouldn't wake up and see something looking in reflected in the mirror. told him it kept me up at night, which wasn't a lie. Here's a link to an old listing for the house. I'll put it down below. Picture number 17 is my old bedroom, and the window to the far left is the window in question. Picture number 25 shows how deeply recessed